Hey everybody. We still have about a minute before we're gonna start, but I want to let you guys know since you're already in here, if you're using a computer, I'm going to have us use a interactive tool today. Um, as we go through an activity, it's called Nearpod, Nearpod. And just to kind of like go ahead and start getting set up for that, why don't you guys just type that into your web browser? I'm going to go to the page with more information about it too. Um, and I will, let's see if I can give you the um, direct link here. Hang on. I'm going to put the direct link to our activity in the chat box too, so you can just click on it. But you can go to the Nearpod website and type in this code and it'll bring it up to you. All right, so it is 2 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started to be mindful of everybody's time and to make sure that we get through everything today. Because today I actually have quite a few things that I want to talk to you guys about and some activities that I think will help to reinforce some of the material that you guys have been learning. Um, So, a little overview of what we'll do. First, we are going to talk about some feedback that I have collected and analyzed from the mid module course evaluation. I sent that out a couple of days ago. It was just a quick and dirty survey for students to complete. So that I can get some feedback in the middle of the module about how things are going. We'll talk about what I found from you guys. We also will be going over the group article for Journal Club assignment number 3 because some of the early feedback I was getting from the course evaluation survey was that there's been kind of an uneven experience across groups and how much participation there's been. And I want to make sure that for the group article that everybody has kind of a firm grasp on what the questions I'm asking are and where to find that information in the article that you pick out for the individual part of the assignment. And I'm also going to do that again next week for you guys for the group article for assignment number 4, just to make sure that we're all on the same playing field here and, that you guys really understand the question. Then we will do just kind of a peek look at week 5 on Moodle. And then we'll have some time for question and answer with me like we usually do. After we've gotten through that, we will end with breakout groups like we did last week. So at the end, we'll break up into groups of maybe 3 or 4, and just to give you guys an opportunity to talk to each other, to other students in the class about, how have you, kind of been managing your time, thinking about assignments coming up or things that are coming up for week 5, and just to get some kind of peer support for one another. And I will have the same procedure as I did last week. I'm going to kind of bounce around in the groups. And at the end of the group, once you guys kind of feel like you have answered all the questions and are feeling good about things, you can just go ahead and exit. That's how we'll break for today. All right. One other thing before we get started, if you have any questions that that you want to make sure I answer today, go ahead and start putting them in the chat box for me so that whenever we get to that point, in our meetup today. I'll kind of have a list there to kind of look at. And I can also be thinking about it while we're doing other parts today. So if you have a question, just go ahead and put it in the chat box, and I'll make sure that we address it when we get to that point. All right. Any questions about what we're doing today or move forward? Thumbs up, sideways, down. Y'all ready for the weekend? Glad it's Friday. I know I am, even though I'm probably gonna be working in some way over the weekend with children. All right, so the first thing that I want us to do is to talk about the results of the mid-module course evaluation. And so I do this kind of informally in all of my courses because I find that at the end of the semester or the module, it's too late to really do anything that's going to be meaningful for you guys who are in the class, and you're not getting the benefit of the labor that you're putting into giving me feedback. And so that's why I do a kind of quick and dirty evaluation in the middle, so that if there are things that we might be able to work on, make things more manageable. I become aware of things that I wasn't aware of. Sometimes students feel more comfortable telling me about things through this mechanism rather than just calling or emailing. So, I really love doing this in research classes though, because it allows me to kind of demonstrate some of the things that you have already been learning. And so that is where our first activity is going to come in today. Um, we're going to use a tool today. It's called Nearpod. If you were on here early, I told these instructions already, but I'm going to do it again. You guys can either click directly on the link that's in the chat box, or you can go to nearpod.com and type in this code that is on here, the BIRVT. And if you're in a place like you're at work or something like that and you're just not able to participate like this, it's really okay. I'm going to share my screen. So it's a setup where, I may ask some poll questions. And so you would just be missing out on being able to answer. So if this becomes like a headache trying to get it to work, don't worry about it. It's not required. It's just supposed to help us make it a little more interactive. So I'm going to go ahead and click out of this and get the activity started for us on my screen so you can see it. All right. I'm going to give you a few minutes to get it set up. Are you guys able to find it on Nearpod, or if you need the code, it's up here in the corner now. It's the BIRVT. But you should just be able to go to your web browser and be able to plug that code in, and then it might ask you for your name. I see I have a couple people. Melinda, I see you're logged in. Siobhan, I see you. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and you guys can keep joining as we kind of go along. Allison, I see you on here now. Do you guys see my screen with okay, good. All right. So the first question that I have for you guys is something that is a question or a concept that you guys learned this week. And reading the things about you know what? Now that I'm looking at this question, I might have jumped ahead on this. This is something that you're actually going to read about next week, about the population and about sampling. So, a sample is a part of the population that we survey. So, actually, no, this probably came up in chapter 10 too, whenever you guys were reading about surveys. But next week, in week 5, you learn more about sampling methods. So, whenever we do a survey, most of the time um, we can't get information from the whole population. And a course evaluation like this, I was really hoping I could get closer to everybody to do it, but as you can imagine, it wasn't the whole population. But what I'm wondering is, what do you think the population for this study is? So a sample is like a smaller part of the bigger population. And so, from what we learn about the sample, we're supposed to be able to generalize our results to the population. So, for an example in research, say I wanted to know um, about PTSD in spouses. That's one of your topics. Your classmate um, Allison is doing that on interventions for service members, spouses, and secondary um, trauma that comes along with that. If we were doing a survey where we were sending out a questionnaire to, let's say, all of the spouses of people who are registered in the Army. So, do you think that'd be practical to send it to everyone in the Army? I'm not really sure, and I'm kind of putting Allison on the spot, but Allison, could you answer that question? How do you think it'd be easy or hard to send a survey out to everyone?
It'd be really hard.
Yeah.
It might be easier necessarily to send it out, but to get people to respond to it would be extremely difficult.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What are some things that would make it hard for people to fill it out? Why do you think people would not fill it out?
If the survey was sent to the spouses, the only way that it could be given to the spouses is through their active duty service member. So there's already like a middleman there because it would have to go to the service member and then to the spouses.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, people typically don't look at those email sources all the time. Even
Mm-hmm.
if they do get the email, they may not look at it. So
Right, yeah. Those are all things that came up in chapter 10 on surveys too, for doing email surveys, right? We see a survey and we're like, delete. I don't do that because I want to have good survey karma as a researcher, and so I always fill out surveys because I know that one day I might do a research project and need someone to fill out a survey. So I always try to fill them out, but most people delete them, and I'm sure I've deleted some that sounded boring. So Allison is saying it'd be very hard to do the whole population, so we would probably have to do some sort of sample of them. So, the people who responded would be our sample. They would be the people that we are able to analyze data on because they responded. So, in this course, I want you to think about what is the population for my study. So, what is the population? Can you guys still see the? Can you see the questions? Okay, like the responses. Um, so, is it? What do you think that it is? I'm gonna give you guys a couple of seconds to log and answer. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and see what you guys think. That later. So most of you guys said all of the students in and on I wish I could open this in another, let's see. All right, here we go. Okay, so all of the students in Dr. DeNicola's sections, yes, that is actually the correct answer. It's a little bit of a trick question because I've been talking about population and sample here. Population is the bigger group that we want to generalize to. So for my course evaluation, I'm most interested in how do these results, um, what do they tell me about the whole group of all of the students? The people who responded to the survey, they are the sample. So the people who actually completed the survey, they are the sample in the total population. All right. So what kind of sampling did I use? Um, this is something that will come up next week. So this is for us to start thinking about now. So I'm going to explain what these concepts are briefly. So for sampling, there are two big categories of sampling. There's probability sampling and there is non-probability sampling. Probability sampling, another name for it, is random sampling because the idea is that we need to get a random sample of people from the population, and by using random sampling, the principles of random sampling allow us to make assumptions that we can generalize from the random sample what we find in them to the population. So in this case, I would have only sent the survey out to one group of students. I would send them to a random sample. But that's not what I did here. I sent it to all of you guys. So we can assume that it's probably not um, a probability sampling, random sampling. Non-probability sampling is a set of sampling techniques that don't use random sampling. So this can be like just using who's available, or it can be a population study where you sample and you survey everyone. That is usually pretty impractical, but sometimes people do that. Like for in my case, if I could make it a population study, if I just kept sending out this link to you guys over and over again until everybody took it, then if everybody took it, then the whole population would have taken the survey. Um, so what are you guys thinking about this particular course evaluation? What sampling strategy do you guys think that I used? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share it. So, you guys, most of you guys have said both B and D, and B and D were convenient sampling and non-probability, and that's correct. Convenient sampling is also correct, but convenient sampling is a type of non-probability
Join the
sampling.
meeting.
So that is why B and D is correct. I think we might have lost somebody, and they're coming back in to the into the chat. All right, so now I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about what I found. I like doing this with research students so that you can see what happens whenever we, send out a survey. What are the next steps? And so I'll show you my analog method. So I printed, I don't know if you can see it with my virtual background. But I've got a bunch of papers here that I printed out from Qualtrics. Qualtrics is a great tool that can give you some basic descriptive statistics, and we'll see these in some of the next slides. So we had an N of 22. That is what represents how many people responded. So out of the 47 students I have in my two sections, 22 people responded to the survey. And so that means that my response rate was 44.7%. Most students answered all of the closed-ended questions, and some didn't answer all the open-ended questions. So even though I have a response rate of 44.7%, for individual items, that is not true. The response rate is lower for some of them. And that means that, since this is a non-random sample, that means that I can make more limited I'm more limited in how I can generalize these findings, because only the people who took the survey are the ones that I know what they think. So there's over half the class who didn't. So I don't know if maybe they're, they might be different in some way than the people who decided to respond. One common bias is that people who are either really satisfied or really dissatisfied are likely to complete satisfaction surveys. So I have to think of that whenever I'm interpreting these results, that the people who responded probably are the most satisfied or not satisfied. All right, so let's keep going and let's see. What do you guys think about the response rate from what you guys learned about surveys? Is that a good response rate? I'll tell you, it actually, by standards of survey research, it's pretty good. Usually getting a response rate on like a big survey, 20%, it's kind of like the cutoff. If it's under 20%, then that's bad. But almost 50% response rate is pretty good for a survey. And there's lots of ways I could have increased the response rate. I could have given you more time to fill it out, could have sent more reminders. There's a lot of different things that you can do to increase response rate. All right, got my next question for you guys. What kind of study is this course evaluation? Is it qualitative? Is it, oh man, I messed up on this one. It's supposed to be, is it quantitative? Is it qualitative or mixed methods? Let's see if I actually messed it up on, on here. Let's see. It might just give you a big hint that neither of those are right. No, I wrote it right on here. Is it qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods? Oops, I meant to press the share. Okay, so um, everybody got it right. It's mixed methods. It is because we had quantitative and qualitative. So the closed-ended questions that I asked, where you had a scale that you had to select on how satisfied you were, um, or whether you thought that different standards were being met or not. Those were all closed-ended questions, and those were all quantitative. And so I'm going to show you what basic quantitative analysis looks like. So for a study that's this small, usually all we can do is really look at descriptive statistics. And descriptive statistics are things even like frequencies. So how many people answered in each category, what percentage of the respondents answered in each category. And so that is what I have to present to you guys for the quantitative data analysis for this. So for number one, it was, to what extent do you think the purpose or goals of the course are being met? And you can see here that, I mean, most of the respondents said mostly met, completely met. This was one person who said mostly not met. And so that is what we call an outlier. And so there's lots of reasons why this person might have responded that way. And some analyses, researchers may even decide, well, if everybody except for that one person said this, then maybe we'll just exclude this, or maybe we'll take an average of these people and put the average for this person. For my purposes, looking at this, I can know as a professor that I think most people are feeling like they're learning the things they're supposed to in the course. There might be some people who aren't, and I think that might mean that they might be a little bit different than the other students, because most of the other students are saying that it's mostly met. Or it could have been a typo. We don't really know, because there's only one and there's no pattern. All right. Number two, how satisfied are you in general with the responsiveness of your instructor? So I can tell everybody's happy with that. I can give a thumbs up. In general, people are satisfied with my responsiveness. This one gets tricky. So this one asked, how comfortable are you in general with the class learning environment? And so this is one, not just in this class, but across all the classes I've really taught, that it's a mixed bag, So I'm wondering, what do you guys think accounts for this variability in scores? So I would say that most of the respondents said they were comfortable or very comfortable. But why do you think it's so spread out? Like the other ones, it was like very clear, yes, things are okay, right? But for this one, it's like, things are not okay. This ends up being about 20% of the people who did the survey saying they're uncomfortable. And so for me, as a professor, this is something that whenever I have it on my hard copy, I make a star by. Like, I'm not happy about that for myself, that some people are uncomfortable. And so it's something I need to explore more. It's clinically significant to me. When we get into statistics, you'll learn about what the difference between something being statistically significant versus clinically. Like, I probably don't have enough data to statistically say it's significant, but clinically, to me in my practice, I don't want my students to be uncomfortable. So it's important to me. It's clinically significant. All right, so before we move into the qualitative part, what did you guys think about this quantitative part? Um, have you guys ever done surveys like this? Like, have you had to do them for your job or um, just things like that? Have you ever had to be the person to collect collect the data for the group? All right. So, I mean, this is pretty basic, but this is really for descriptive studies, and even sometimes for exploratory surveys. This is kind of the information that you get, sometimes you are just counting things, um, you know, uh, for me, for instance, a really big study that I follow all the time is the rates of autism. So, finding out what the prevalence of it is, how many women versus men have autism, because that's my area of focus and that's descriptive research. And that's what this is. All right. So for the qualitative analysis, this gets a little bit more fun. So there were 4 or 5 questions on here that were open-ended questions. And so that's what made this evaluation mixed methods, because I had those closed-ended questions and then I had open-ended questions for you to write out your answer. And it wasn't really structured in any way. It was just open-ended for you to answer or not answer, because as you can imagine, for open-ended questions, you get a lower response rate. So pretty much everybody answered the closed-ended questions. But for the qualitative analysis, you'll see on this next slide, these are the questions that I asked, and then in parentheses here, this is how many people responded to each one of the questions. So for all of them, 15 people responded, except for number 6, which was the question about is there any feedback that you want to direct to other students. So it was all 15 and then 11. So there were about, bad at math, but like 6 or 7, I guess, people who just answered those 3, who just answered the first 3 fill in the blank, not fill in the blank, multiple choice questions. But I got the most rich data from the open-ended questions. So, the biggie that had clinical significance to me was this one, right? So I just know there's some people out there who are uncomfortable. And so I don't know much else about why they're uncomfortable or what I can do to help them feel more comfortable. Whether it's something about me and the teaching style, is it the content? What is it, right? So since this is mixed methods, though, I did get some information about it that at least, even though I didn't ask this exact question again, I can kind of assume and infer some of the things that might be uncomfortable for the people who said that they chose either neither comfortable or not uncomfortable or uncomfortable. And so I'm gonna go over that, but I wish I could show you this better. But on my sheets, I printed out all of the comments. I've read all of them and I highlighted themes. So, you know, anytime I saw something, I thought, oh, that's a really good, important, pertinent thing to this question, I highlighted it. And I did that for all 4 of these questions. Then I went back with a sheet of paper and a pen, and I wrote down the first thing I saw. And the first thing I saw was enjoyed interactive nature. Okay, so I wrote that once, and then every time I saw that again when I was reading through the comments, I put a check mark by it, so that I knew that it wasn't just one person who said that, 2 people said it, or however many. And that's really how you do quantitative analysis, is you do that so that you can identify themes. And so that's what I've done here that I want to share with you guys, and then to get some feedback from you about. So these are the themes that emerged from the qualitative data. That the students who responded said that they liked the interactive nature of the course, that they were satisfied with my availability and my responsiveness to them. It seemed like everyone who responded made a comment or indicated that they felt like they were learning a lot. But at the same time, I also saw that there were a lot of comments about the overwhelming workload and details, particularly like with assignment instructions or the layout of the course on Moodle. Also, there were mixed reviews on using technology tools, and there were some mixed reviews on group work. So some people were saying that, yeah, you know, using Padlet was great with my journal club, and we used it really well. Some groups, or some people have said my group didn't interact at all, and I basically did all of that on my own. And some others use different methods, like a text message chain or a Zoom call. There were mixed reviews on that. There were some people very satisfied with how things went with their journal club group, and some people who were very unhappy with it. And the same thing for the tech tools. So some people were, you know, all thumbs up, like, I really enjoy this, I like the variety. And then there were just as many comments that were, you know, worried about the tech tools, didn't really enjoy them, felt like there were lots of problems with them. And another kind of theme that came out is that students, I think, or there at least are some that responded that feel unsure about whether they're finishing all of the work they need to, or unsure of what work they're supposed to be doing for the class, and worrying that they're going to miss a detail and it's going to affect their grade. And so those are the themes I saw. So the next part of this activity with you guys is I'm going to tell you some of my conclusions, next steps about things. And then we're going to do a short little exercise where I can get a little bit of feedback from this group about, okay, now that we know this about, you know, from the survey, what are some things that we might be able to do? I'm more interested in this semester, you know, to help you guys, to help with some of these things. So again, the conclusions I drew is that students generally like the course, even though they are not particularly interested in research. Students like interactive activities to reinforce concepts, especially when it's real life scenarios. Students are satisfied with my availability, my willingness to help to teach. But that there are students who are overwhelmed with the course layout and with the workload. Okay, so my next steps, these are 4 things I've thought of to address this. One is something that we're going to do later in our meetup today is we'll walk through the answers to um, journal club assignment number 3 for your group article. And I'll do that again next week just to make sure everybody has an even playing field with that. Another thing that came up with specifically about the tech tools is that some students are kind of camera shy with using Flipgrid. And I have some resources for you. You don't always have to show your face on Flipgrid. There are so many different features that you can use where maybe even you do a short presentation or you just put a picture up or a graph up or some sort of visual and you talk behind it. I'm okay with that. Even for for example, for the Flipgrids that were the discussions about ethical challenges, like if you want to put up a picture of something that's related to that ethical challenge and then talk behind it, I'm okay with that. It can just be verbal. And then the other thing I'm willing to do is to require it less, and maybe to make it more of an option. In other classes, like especially for participation activities, I've said you can either write a paragraph about this or make a post on Flipgrid. So I'm willing to adjust in that way. Um, I'm also going to be working on giving some more context of the purpose of assignments and to really kind of emphasize for you guys what the competencies are that we're working on developing. I know it's a lot of work in the class, but none of it is meant to be busy work. So if you feel like you're not learning something from the activities that you're doing, then I want to know so that I can know if that is like a general thing or not, because I am willing to find ways to make this easier for you guys because I know that you have a lot on your plate with internships. There's so many of you who are in your first time internship right now. Um, as long as we're still meeting the objectives of the class, I'm okay with us modifying things. And I actually try to set up the syllabus so that there's some flexibility for that. Having like a group of journal club assignments instead of saying you just have one journal article that a review that's due at the end of the semester. Um, so there's some flexibility for some of these things. So that kind of comes to my last step is that I want to solicit some ideas from you guys today about 4 things. I'm going to move to the next slide to show it to you so you can see it better. So one thing, if you have an idea about how to organize things on Moodle better, please let me know because Moodle is the bane of my existence. I hate Moodle and it's very clunky and difficult to work with. And if you've had people do things in other classes that has made things more streamlined, that sort of thing, I want to know because I'm always struggling with that, trying to present that material to you guys where you're not too overwhelmed. So if you have an idea, I'm definitely willing to hear it. Like I just said before, reducing the course load, as long as we're keeping course objectives in mind, I'm okay with you making a suggestion about that. And then reducing just stress and anxiety. So I heard from a lot of students that, there's a lot of focus on grades. And I was a student. I know grades are important. And at the same time, now on the other side as a professor, I'm much more concerned about you learning these concepts. And secondly, having good self-care strategies and taking care of yourself than you getting an A or a B on my assignments. You know, your grade, those things are more important to me than your grades. But I know that for you guys, your grades is probably number one, right? But I want to challenge you to think about, the big picture. And if you're learning these things, are you letting this get to you to the point where it's stressing you out and you're not enjoying other things in your life? Because this class should not be there. I love research and I'm a nerd and I like read journal articles for fun, but there's more to life than research, and there's more to life than school. So um, let's find ways to support first, students to support each other with that, to reduce your stress. And then any other kind of idea you have that pops up. So I'm going to give you guys about 5 minutes to share some ideas on here. So this is what's called a collaborate board. And so in the white space on here, like right here, you just share your idea. So if you're like, I don't want to do any more journal club assignments, or I have a great idea for using Moodle, I'm going to let you put it right here and we'll talk about them. I'm going to turn off my video for just a minute though while you guys are doing this, so I can make sure we're set up for the next part of the meetup, okay? right. So I'm looking at this and doing some quick brain qualitative analysis of these responses. And I'm looking at the likes too to kind of see this. The two ones with the most likes are this one potentially reduce the time consuming participation activities to 1 or 2. Okay. And then I think the number of participation activities is a lot, and that you learn more from them than the JC assignments. Okay. And I like the idea of doing the group part of the JC instead of both. And I think that came up on some of the other ones too. So, so this is really helpful feedback on this. And, two things that I'm thinking from this that are actionable for this module. One is the fewer participation activities. So for weeks 6 and 7, I'll even say I'll just put one. So I might give you a choice, but you'll just do one. For the JC assignments, so the thing about the journal club assignments is that they are really connected to pretty core concepts in the class. And so that's what my logic behind having you guys do it as a group and then doing it individually was so you could get some feedback about how to do it and to collaborate on it and then to do it yourself. Um, and I think that I've already kind of started addressing it in my own way. That I'm going to give you guys the answers for for the group article. So that's one thing we're going to do today is go through the answers for number 3. It's really important for me in the journal club assignments that I know that the concepts behind the questions. And so instead of getting rid of the individual assignment, I think I'm kind of getting rid of the group one. So we're going to be working together on the answers more as a class and like in a video that I'll post for next week. That doesn't mean you can't still collaborate with your classmates. Like to talk about like, did you understand XYZ in that video? There's still ways to collaborate with your group. But it's not something that is going to be as emphasized for the next 2 journal club assignments because I am going to be working with you guys on the group article. So think of it now, instead of a group article, it's a class article that we're doing together rather. Does that make sense to you guys? I think it might make more sense when I show you the next thing we're going to do. All right. Thank you guys for this feedback too. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be open with me about this because this is really, the main way for me to improve as an instructor and to improve this course for people because, students come into this class already not really being super excited about it. And so I don't want an unbearable workload to be another deterrent, but I'll also at the same time want you guys to learn and to meet the competencies of the class. All right. Any questions before we move to the next part? Okay, let's move on. All right, can everybody see the slide that we were on before, like the pink, purple? Okay. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is exactly what I was talking about, is going through the group article that's assigned for this week, um, and to answer the questions together. And so this is another Nearpod activity. So I'm going to put the link to this one in the chat so you can just click on it directly, or you can type in this new code. I feel like Zoom looks different every time I open it. Like things are always in a different place. Um, let's see. All right, there we go. That is the link, and just like before, you can either click on the link directly, or you can go to nearpod.com and put in this. Okay, so I couldn't find the chat. Now I can't get rid of it. Okay, so the first thing that comes up is just a copy of the article. So I'm not going to stay on this very long, but if you look right here, there is a download button. So if you don't have it readily available to you and you want to have it like on another screen while we're looking at this, you can click on this button and it'll let you download it. So something like this will pop up for you to download the PDF. Um, and I do have like some screenshots and things as we go along too, so you won't be completely lost or anything if you don't have all of it. All right. I need to go back to Nearpod. Okay, so you guys should all kind of have this now. Um, so the first question that I have for you guys is from the article. What do you think the main concept is that they're measuring here? And I have a couple of different options for you. Um, is it self-efficacy? Is it satisfaction? Or is it compassion fatigue? Is it not working for you, Kristen? Hang on. Do you want to unmute so maybe I can help you troubleshoot?
Hey, no, I just lost my study that I had put onto my computer screen. So I was kind of going, so I'll get it right back up. You keep going. I'm sorry. I
No,
was working and jumped onto this.
I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't the Nearpod thing because I know it's new.
It's not. It's me, not you.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share it with you guys. And yeah, everybody who answered got it right. And it's about self-efficacy. And so Holden is a researcher who has been working on self-efficacy and social work education for years and years. And you will pick up on this in the article because he talks about how this is like a third replication study of learning more about this measure. And it is very meta of me, but of course it's a research, it's an evaluation self-efficacy scale for students. And so this is where you can kind of find that information. So it's in the title, self-efficacy. There's several places where they talk about scales of self-efficacy. All right, so the next question I'm just going to kind of talk about with you guys and then show you in the article where this pops up, the answers. So how does the research study fit within the current knowledge base? So in this particular study, we know this because right here before they get into the study design, they talk about this, that compared with the original ESE studies, they assess the same construct, same setting, same course instructor over the same time frame, using the same research design, same scale format, but with different contents and a different sample. So that is one big major hint about ways that this is going to contribute to the knowledge base. Then you'll see that he talks a little bit more about this too. So I kind of cut this off, but at the bottom of this page, it talks about how we can use self-efficacy scales for accreditation purposes. So sorry, you guys might hear my 3-year-old fighting his nap in the background. But we can use this for accreditation purposes. So every school of social work, we have to meet certain standards all across the country. The Council on Social Work Education has these standards that are called the EPAS, which I can never remember what acronyms stand for. But we can use these measures in accreditation to tell whether our schools are meeting these standards or not. And then second, it is a way to give faculty members a tool. So instead of just giving you my mid-course evaluation, I could give you a tool before you started the class and afterwards to know whether you learned stuff or not, which is pretty cool. All right. Let's see. I feel like I missed a question here. Hang on. Okay, so let's do this question. So one of the questions that you're asked in your journal club articles are describe the sample. So which ones do you think apply here? All right. Even though you guys haven't answered this one, I'm going to answer it for, oh, you have. Whoa, that was weird. Okay, so some of you guys, let me share it so you can see it. Some of you guys have said an N of 210, mostly women, from one university. Social work graduate students, yes, that's the main one I was was most important to me, and you guys are all rocking that. Y'all got that right. So there is one tricky question that I gave you though, with the N of 210 and the N of 168. So for the sample that was used, so usually that means for the statistical analyses. So how many cases were used in the statistical analyses? And that answer is actually N equals 168. So they had N equals 210, but out of all of those 210, only 168 of the surveys they got back were usable. Oh, you want me to go back?
No, it's not letting me participate, but I have a question. So
Yeah.
let me just make sure that I understand what you're saying. Even though initially in the study they had 210 participants,
Yeah.
only 168 of those participants, when they filled out their survey, those surveys were going to be available to use. They were properly done. So that's what, so the N actually changes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And that's what I'm mostly concerned about in this class is like, what is the N that was used for, like, especially in intervention studies, you might have this like whole figure of we started out with sending out surveys to 1,000 people and then it trickles down to 50, I want to know about those 50, not the 1,000 they started with. Yeah.
Okay, so for longitudinal studies, with some of the ways I'm starting to read that when you have a longitudinal study and they can't do follow-up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then it's changing as you go. How does that, I guess that's a totally different question, but it's part
No,
of my lit review.
it's not. I mean, it's a bigger research question, and so what happens is that sometimes we'll have to impute data. So that means that we have to use methods like, okay, we're going to take the mean of everybody, and then we're going to say that those missing cases, we're going to impute that mean into their cases. So even though they didn't answer, we're going to give them an answer based on what the average answer was.
The most likely answer would be, okay.
And there's lots of different fancy ways to do that, not just the mean imputation way that I just said. There's other ways that people can estimate, what those particular people might respond in.
Okay.
But in a lot of studies, it's easier just to drop them because because of sample size usually. So to be able to do those kind of statistics, you need really big samples. And so with like just about 200 people, we wouldn't really be able to do that for this study. That's a great question. So this is where I found this. So there's a group of 210 anonymous scores were obtained, and then there were 168 complete usable sets of both pre and post tests that were available. And you know what? I thought somewhere that they said in here that they only used those 168, and I'm pretty sure that's certain. It might come up in the results section where they talked about that. But one thing to kind of clue you in on here, so this is a trick question, they didn't ask demographic data for these students, so we don't know about the students, except for that the larger campus population is consisted like this. But the social work students who filled this out might not have fit that mold. So this data is not actually from the sample. This is from, we think that this is a good comparison. But it's not the actual samples information because they didn't collect the data on it. Okay, next question. Reliability of the scale. So I am going to actually just start answering these questions for you because we're starting to run, low on time, and I want you to get the answers here. So yes, the reliability was tested, and they used the Cronbach's alpha. And so that tests internal consistency. The trick answer here was the retest reliability kappa. That's a different type of reliability, but they did not use that. They used internal consistency, and they used the Cronbach's. And we know that because they say it right here in their research questions. They're going to talk about reliability. They report a Cronbach's alpha, so we can assume that's how they're going to measure it. So how reliable is the scale? We're going to look at the Cronbach's. So this is moving to the results section, and we find that from the complete cases, that 168 surveys, that the Cronbach's alphas before the class and after the class are both 0.95. That's a really high Cronbach's alpha, and that means that it is very highly internally consistent. So it is, we can say that the internal consistency is good for this measure. And they say this again in the discussion. They talk about overall findings supported the psychometric properties of the revised ESE2. And if you keep going, they say it also demonstrated excellent reliability at both assessment points. So we know from the Cronbach's alpha, because the closer to 1 it is, the better the internal consistency. And then we also know, because in the discussion they say it. They say the reliability was good. So now we're looking at validity. In this study, they looked at content validity and convergent validity. So content validity is, did it measure what we think that it would measure? And convergent validity is comparing it to another scale that's similar. Okay, so if we go back to their research questions, this is where we find that information. So they talk about content validity, they talk about convergent validity. First, they know that there's a link between empowerment and self-efficacy. So they measured empowerment and self-efficacy, and they hypothesized that those two things would be related, because since conceptually they're kind of related, then statistically they should also be kind of related. And that would mean that we have more evidence to say, yeah, we're really measuring self-efficacy. Okay, how valid is this? So where you find these answers is in the results section. So right under reliability, they talk about content validity, and they talk about this. So in content validity, in addition to the empowerment scale that they use, they also compared it to two standards that are set by CSWE. And for both of those comparisons, the statistics showed that there were strong correlations for both. So that means that we can assume that they have good content validity. If you okay, I mixed that up a little bit. So let me explain this again. So what I just explained was explaining construct validity, which is the convergent validity that I was talking about before, where you're comparing it to something that's similar. So this is where it reports the statistics of that. So The empowerment scale, the ESE, no, the SWE, and then the ESE is the self-efficacy scale. There, this is the statistic, which is a correlation was 0.33. So that's like moderate. You know, it's not super strong, but it's moderate. Then you'll find for the items that were from CSWE, the correlation was 0.75. So that's much closer to 1. That means that that correlation is very high. So that gives us some good evidence that what we are measuring in this scale is, you know, really measuring what we want, because this is what CSWE says the competencies are supposed to be about research. And from the scale that was used, the correlation was very high. For the content validity, I'm going to go back to this since I've switched it, scrambled it a little on you guys. The content validity is more of a conceptual argument about things. So what they're saying is that, you know, the two instruments that have been developed reflect knowledge and skills that are related to a course that's on evaluation. And so since they are, you know, kind of visually eyeballing this, basically, you know, it makes sense that we took this from an evaluation course, so it should measure evaluation. But now we know even more so that we're right, because we've tested construct validity to support it. All right. If I get to the next thing. Okay, there are limitations. You'll see at the very bottom of the last page, it was non-random. It was from one school of social work. It was a limited time period. And it was just one course and the same instructor. Also, they had a lot of attrition. So 20% or so of students didn't do both of the assessments. So there could be a reason for that. There might be group differences. So the people who completed both of them might be different in some way than the people who completed both of them. So the people who didn't complete both of them, they might maybe they were sick that day that they did it in class, or maybe they are just morally opposed to you know, to doing surveys now that they've taken a research class and they're jaded and never want to look at it again. We don't know. There could be a lot of different reasons. Then they talk about the topics a little bit above that of what the implications are. So the biggest implications are that this confirms the same findings they had from before. And so they know with even more certainty that this is a good self-efficacy scale. Also, it emphasizes flexibility. So the scale before this measured self-efficacy about something a little bit different than what it measures now. Like this basic construct of this particular self-efficacy scale has been used to measure hospital social work self-efficacy. It uses the same framework as this. And what they're saying is that we could use this to measure lots of competencies. Maybe we could do it for policy. Maybe we could do it for practice. And since we were able to do it between this old version and the one that we're doing now with the ESE2, that it gives further evidence that we can do that. he also is very snarky at the end of the article, addressing some public uh, criticism he got about self-efficacy, and goes through his little points about why, there are some arguments against using self-efficacy. And so this would also be something you might list as a limitation, that there are other arguments about this. All right, I am gonna pull out of this in just a minute, and since I have overshot on my time, I want to give you the rest of our time to ask questions, because I know that you guys usually have some questions that come up. And I think that's kind of the most important thing for us to do here. So I'm gonna look at my chat real quick first and see if there are any other questions that I've missed yet. And I am actually going to undo my oh, okay. Okay, some of you guys have had to go. I totally understand. All right, for our last, few minutes here, how are you guys feeling? What kind of questions do you have as we're moving into week 5?
Hi, it's Haley. I have a quick question about longitudinal versus cross-sectional studies. If you're testing an intervention and you do like a pre-test, post-test, technically you're doing it over a span of time. So is that considered longitudinal, even though it's not like over, years and years and years, or months and months, even if it's within let's say 30 days of the intervention or something along those lines, or is that cross-sectional?
It is longitudinal because there are 2 data collection points. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions? So, kind of going back to the evaluation too, you can just tell me with thumbs up, or, do you think that's going to be helpful to, make those modifications? Like in my head, these are the 2 things I'm thinking of, doing another activity like this where I go through the answers for the number 4 journal club assignment. I'm not going to do it within the meetup again, but I'm just going to record a video to share for people for that. And then the second thing that I'm going to do is for weeks 6 and 7, I'm going to give you 2 options for participation activities, and you can do one or the other. Yeah, okay, cool.
I like the idea of you going through the answers for the current journal club assignment, simply because, at least with my group last week, we were having disagreements and nobody could quite figure it out. So I appreciate you going through it this week with us.
Yeah. I am one of the things that has made me slow to grade your second journal club assignments is that I'm realizing that people had trouble with that. I can't remember, I think I gave you guys an example, but it doesn't seem like everybody knew there was an example, or because we did it in the meetup together is what it was. But I don't think everyone is watching the meetups. I try to direct people to the videos as much as possible, but another idea I have about that, since the grades are really pretty bad right now, is to do another video where I go through the group one, And then to have you guys to submit it again, like to submit your second one again. If you're not happy with your grade, if you've gotten it yet. What do you guys think about that?
That sounds good. Actually, speaking of disagreements, the Likert scale, is
Mhm.
that ordinal or interval? Because I tried Googling it after to figure it out, and there seems to be a debate, and maybe there's like a right answer that I just don't know, but
There is not a right answer on that. I would give credit to anybody who said ordinal or interval, because what happens in the scientific community, scientists argue about this too. And really, what the argument is that our ordinal scales, you're very limited when you use ordinal data on what kind of statistical analyses you can use. So researchers are much more likely to say, yeah, philosophically, this is an interval scale, so I can use these more sophisticated statistical methods and find out some more better answers, or about my question, because it is really a philosophical difference between ordinal and interval. And I mean, with any kind of scale, you could argue either way, whether it's ordinal or it's interval. I'll say practically from that kind of debate, most people treat it as interval because you can use more statistics.
got it. Thank you. Yeah, because when I looked it up online, they said technically it's ordinal, but most people consider it interval, and then none of us really knew, so we were just kind of throwing our 2 cents in.
Right, right. And according to the textbook and the way they explain it, I would totally understand why everybody would answer ordinal. But knowing that little extra piece of information about scientists and everything that we just talked about, now you kind of know about the interval part.
Got it. Thank you.
So the last question I have for you guys is, how do you want us to use this time during the meetup? Like, has this been helpful with you guys, or would you like to do different types of things? I had a nod from Kristen, so my my N of one says it's very helpful.
I liked the Nearpod stuff. The more interactive it was, the better I was understanding stuff. So
Okay, good, good. Yeah, because last week after our meeting, I was like, man, I was bored. So I felt bad for you guys. And so that's why I looked into that. And it seemed like it worked pretty well for you guys. Did you guys have a lot of problems with it, or was it kind of okay?
I mean, it worked fine for me.
Okay. Yeah. And, like I said before, it's kind of a thing you can do or you cannot do. It's not going to hurt you if you don't do it. All right. Last minute. Any other questions? All right. Well, like the other Fridays, I'll be in my personal room until like 4:30. So if you have specific questions like about your lit review or next week's research project or anything about the class, just pop in there. All right. I hope y'all have a good weekend. Bye.
You